ItWas Harlow crouched behind a stack of cracked energy crates, trying to look like a soldier and failing spectacularly. One glowing panel reflected off his helmet, bouncing light into his eyes and giving him a headache that rivaled the station's failing climate controls. The Andari soldiers were advancing from the corridor, their elongated ears twitching in precise synchrony, giving away their every thought like a scoreboard of suspicion. ItWas considered panicking but remembered his plan, which, if executed correctly, would earn him not only a kiss, but a lifetime of slightly awkward but undeniable admiration from Kayla. If nothing else, it would at least get him a story to tell in the barracks, one that didn't involve slipping on anti-gravity puddles and losing a helmet to an errant robotic arm. Kayla was approaching now, her luminous green eyes scanning the debris with all the precision of a master strategist who also apparently liked to judge humans for their terrible sense of timing. ItWas froze, half in awe, half in terror as she crouched beside him, her long ears quivering in that irritatingly adorable way. He wondered briefly whether humans could somehow genetically engineer ears like hers without starting a galactic incident. But there wasn't time for academic musings when she was leaning closer, her hand hovering like she might touch him, and the entire station was about to notice that he was conspicuously lying very still. Private Harlow. Her voice carried that tone, the one that suggested she was equal parts concerned and annoyed, the combination most likely to make a man confess he had a mild allergy to courage. You are not moving. Are you dead? Or pretending, or somehow? ItWas had practiced this moment in his mind approximately 12 times, each rehearsal ending with him either passing out from embarrassment or accidentally setting his helmet on fire. He had to commit. He couldn't betray his own scheme, not when Kayla's ears were twitching closer to the ultimate expression of curiosity, and not when the micro-drones buzzing in the ceiling vents had paused, suspiciously observing the human drama. He exhaled through his nose, which sounded alarmingly like a small whistle, and stayed perfectly still. Kayla's eyes narrowed, scanning his prone form. "You're ridiculous." She muttered it quietly, but the vibration in her voice made her ears flick in a rhythm that was almost musical, like a warning siren wrapped in silk. She crouched closer, peering under the edge of his helmet, and ItWas felt the absurdity of his position intensify. He had expected her to perhaps sigh in sympathy, or maybe prod him with one of her perfectly dexterous fingers, but instead she leaned closer, lips curving in that infuriating way that suggested she was about to scold him while simultaneously judging his taste in socks. A small robotic arm swung down from the ceiling, tapping on the debris near his head. Unidentified body detected. Vital signs, it buzzed, insufficient, recommending immediate triage. ItWas internally groaned. This was supposed to be a private affair, not a full-scale medical intervention in zero gravity. He wished he had thought to disable the drones before initiating his plan, but hindsight was always cruel in the face of opportunity and gravity, or in this case, the lack thereof. Kayla's eyes flicked to the hovering drone. She muttered something in Andari which ItWas guessed loosely meant, "Do not ruin this, human fool." She leaned down, closer than strictly necessary, and in a move that completely violated every protocol of interstellar decorum, pressed her lips lightly against his helmet. ItWas nearly inhaled a spurt of synthetic coolant. He was aware that this was technically a kiss of curiosity and concern, but it felt like gravity itself had decided to take a day off and let him float in ecstasy. He had to stifle a laugh or risk revealing his ruse. The station's loudspeaker buzzed, announcing that a containment breach in lab sector Gamma had triggered a Level 2 alert. ItWas thought this was an excellent time to die and leave Kayla to live without witnessing any further human incompetence, but of course, he couldn't. He had to remain motionless, heroically dead, even as sparks from a stray energy puddle sizzled near his boots. Kayla muttered another string of Andari words, which ItWas, in his panic, decided sounded like an eloquent complaint about humans who couldn't die convincingly. Her ears twitched with such emphasis that he could swear one of them was wagging like a small flag. A micro-robot scuttled past, its sensors picking up heat signatures and waving its mechanical arms at the body. Kayla rolled her eyes. "Really?" she said, her voice dripping with amusement. "A human pretending to die. How original." ItWas squeezed his eyes shut, convinced that she was going to discover the truth any second, and also hoping the micro-robot didn't decide to administer an unnecessary revival shock. He hadn't thought to prepare for the post-kiss aftermath, only the kiss itself. Kayla leaned back slightly, scanning him one last time. "You are the most infuriating human I have ever met," she said, lips twitching with what might have been a smile. "And possibly the most entertaining." ItWas felt like he had been promoted in life for exactly 5 seconds. His ears, or rather, the absence of impressive Andari ones, burned with pride. Then the floor rumbled as one of the station's maintenance lifts shuddered violently, spilling a vat of glowing, semi-liquid nanites across the corridor. Kayla's eyes widened, and she grabbed him, dragging him out of the path, though she still didn't realize he was alive. He lay there, feeling absurdly heroic for having survived both a kiss and a potential nanite bath. Kayla muttered under her breath about humans and their reckless foolishness, and ItWas silently vowed that next time he would at least wear a cape. She stood upright, giving him one last annoyed look, her long ears quivering with judgment and possibly delight, then walked off to argue with a maintenance supervisor about safety protocols, leaving ItWas lying there, the most alive-dead soldier in the history of Veridian 9. He smiled to himself, thinking that if love was always this complicated and ridiculous, he could endure it, just as long as no one asked him to pretend to die again. The station lights flickered overhead, casting shadows that danced in perfect rhythm with his pounding heart, and ItWas whispered, "Worth it." Kayla's long ears flicked irritably as she marched down the corridor, dragging a very stiff, very dead ItWas behind her like a reluctant parade float. The station's emergency lights bathed the walls in a cheery shade of orange, which somehow made everything feel less like a level 2 alert and more like an interstellar disco with bad taste in interior design. ItWas was acutely aware of the absurdity of his predicament. Alive, pinned under Kayla's surprisingly strong grip, and yet still playing dead with the commitment of a man auditioning for a zero-gravity theater troupe. "Do you always do this?" Kayla muttered, shaking her head so hard her ears made a low, melodic thrum against her shoulders. "Pretend to die, for what? Entertainment, human ego, galactic chaos." ItWas felt a twitch of guilt, or maybe pride. It was hard to tell from the perspective of a prone soldier. He thought he might have laughed if he moved a single muscle, which of course he could not. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with a medical drone, its scanners spinning like a confused disco ball. The drone buzzed in alarm. "Unstable vital signs detected. Body non-compliant with standard human protocols. Immediate revival recommended." Kayla sighed, swatting the drone with her long, dexterous fingers. "Not now, we have priorities." ItWas, pinned against her side, attempted to whisper through the helmet, "I promise I'll revive later," but all that came out was a muffled gurgle. Kayla simply rolled her eyes. The corridor ahead shuddered as a containment alarm sounded from Lab Sector Gamma, and tiny swarms of micro-robots scuttled along the walls, their sensors twitching. ItWas' internal monologue jumped wildly between "this is fine" and "I am going to die in a puddle of glowing nanites." Though outwardly he remained an exemplary corpse, stiff and impressively still. Kayla swore under her breath, her ears quivering in what was either frustration or silent laughter. "Really, ItWas, really? Must every human interaction involve near-death theatrics?" A micro-robot skittered toward them, its claws clicking. Kayla ducked and rolled, dragging ItWas in a perfectly timed arc that would have earned medals in some military manual if anyone cared to observe it. She muttered to herself in Andari, something that sounded suspiciously like, "You will be the death of me, or I will be the death of your ego. ItWas felt a faint tingle in his chest, which he interpreted as the dangerous thrill of success, or maybe just indigestion from holding his breath. As they reached the observation deck, the station's windows framed a supernova in the distance, an enormous, colorful bloom that seemed to mock the absurdity of the situation with its quiet grandeur. ItWas wanted to admire it, but his body refused to cooperate, pinned as it was to Kayla's grip. She glanced at him, her lips twitching with a smile that was entirely too knowing, entirely too amused. If I weren't an alien with far superior survival instincts, I might actually scold you for wasting a cosmic spectacle on your own theatrics. ItWas felt his heart leap, which was inconvenient since that would have been a tell for his dead act. The station's security comm system buzzed, issuing a garbled alert about a rogue microentity threat and a potential human violation. Kayla muttered, "Fantastic. Everyone will think you're dead, I'm a murderer, and the nanites are judging us." ItWas' eyes twitched, but he stayed impressively still, because this was, after all, the moment he had been training for since he decided to fake his death. The perfect intersection of chaos, embarrassment, and potential affection. Kayla leaned closer, brushing her ears against his shoulder to whisper a scolding, though the warmth in her voice made it clear that she was enjoying the ridiculousness at least as much as she pretended not to. "If you survive this, human, I swear I will never let you pull another stunt like this again. Possibly ever. Maybe. Definitely if there are cameras." ItWas almost wanted to laugh at the prospect, but again, heroically stiff. The micro-robots began converging in a haphazard, gleeful swarm, their glowing sensors scanning for anything that smelled like organic matter. Kayla made a series of precise gestures, flicking tiny controls embedded in her wristband. The swarm scattered like confetti at a zero-G festival, each bot now chasing a holographic decoy projected from her wrist. ItWas could feel the faint vibrations as the bots collided with walls and floors, producing a chaotic symphony of clicks and beeps that might have been musical if one were not currently pretending to be dead. Kayla stood upright for a moment, dragging ItWas like an inconvenient trophy. "You know, if this is your way of flirting, humans are terrifying," she said, her lips quirking in amusement. "And reckless, and sort of interesting, I suppose. In a very irritating way." ItWas' internal monologue collapsed into incoherent joy. He had achieved contact. He had survived micro-robots. And Kayla, the brilliant, infuriating, absolutely otherworldly Kayla, was talking to him as if he were alive, though technically he wasn't supposed to be. The station's loudspeaker buzzed with a cheerful announcement about an unscheduled nanite bloom and a potential human life form incident. ItWas wondered if anyone would ever tell him what was happening if he moved again and risked the grand reveal. Kayla didn't care, and perhaps that was the beauty of it. She adjusted her grip, keeping him close as they rounded another corridor filled with flickering panels and the faint scent of burnt electronics. "Honestly, I should be annoyed," she muttered, "but watching you flail silently is oddly entertaining. Do you always make death look this dramatic?" ItWas' response was a muffled snort, which he considered a success. Kayla glanced down, her green eyes narrowing in playful suspicion. "Don't even think about moving," she warned, though the twitch of her ears betrayed that she might be enjoying this a little too much. "One wrong twitch and you owe me not only an explanation but possibly a lifetime supply of apology drinks." ItWas could feel the warmth of her concern, or was it amusement, as she maneuvered through the chaos of the station. They reached the med bay finally, a fluorescent, humming chamber filled with blinking machinery and small medical drones that eyed ItWas with curiosity bordering on judgment. Kayla set him down carefully, adjusting his helmet so that it didn't slip, and muttered, "Next time you plan a stunt, human, I swear I will rewrite the intergalactic etiquette handbook just to include your idiocy as a cautionary tale." ItWas felt a surge of relief and excitement. He had survived, she was impressed, at least partially, and he had somehow earned a kiss, an adventure, and possibly her admiration. As Kayla straightened up, her ears twitching in amusement, ItWas thought that maybe, just maybe, chaos, micro-robots, and near-death theatrics were worth it, especially when they resulted in a moment like this. Her green eyes sparkling, her voice full of exasperated humor, and the faint brush of her presence against him as the station continued to hum, glow, and dance around them, oblivious to the absurd, clumsy, and oddly romantic human Angari drama unfolding at its core. ItWas sat upright on the medbay bench, helmet removed at last, feeling both remarkably alive and profoundly embarrassed. Kayla stood nearby, her long ears twitching in a rhythm that suggested equal parts exasperation and amusement. The micro-robots had been contained, the nanite spill neutralized, and the station's alarms had settled into a dull, boring hum that felt almost peaceful. Somehow, after all the chaos, he was still alive, still conscious, and still, to his disbelief, in Kayla's orbit, both figuratively and physically. "So," Kayla began, folding her arms, "you've been lying to me this entire time." Her green eyes glimmered with that sharp mix of incredulity and curiosity that made ItWas' chest tighten. "You pretended to be dead. All of it. The drama, the near-nanite death experience. Entirely a ruse for what? A kiss." ItWas shuffled, embarrassed, and scratched the back of his neck. "Well, yes," he admitted sheepishly, "but to be fair, it was a very good kiss. And I was in mortal danger, technically. I mean the nanites." Kayla rolled her eyes, and ItWas noted that her ears flared in a way that was possibly a sigh, possibly a small internal applause. "You are ridiculous," she said, though the corners of her mouth twitched. "I should be furious. I could have reported this to command. I could have." She waved a hand, narrowly missing a hovering med drone. "Actually, never mind, the med drones are watching. But still, you are a human of remarkable idiocy." ItWas chuckled nervously. "I may have miscalculated," he said, "but I've also learned things about courage mostly. And about asking for things in more creative ways. Also about how terrifying it is when your ears do that twitch thing." Kayla stepped closer, brushing her hand lightly along the edge of his armor, which was still smudged with nanite residue. "You've learned nothing," she said dryly, "except maybe that humans are exceptionally bad at subtlety." She glanced away for a moment, then back at him, and for an instant her expression softened. "But you are alive, and apparently more stubborn than I expected. That counts for something." The station doors hissed open, admitting a small contingent of security officers who had clearly come to witness the aftermath of the incident. They froze, unsure whether to reprimand, arrest, or applaud ItWas, who was still recovering from his heroic pretension. Kayla raised one hand in a commanding gesture, a smile tugging at her lips. "Everything is under control," she said. "Micro-robots contained, nanite spill neutralized, and this human is temporarily repentant." The officers blinked. One of them coughed. "Repentant, noted," he said, retreating slowly as though any closer might trigger further disaster. ItWas gave Kayla a grateful, awkward nod. She flicked her ears, which he took to mean, "You're lucky I like you." Later, in the station's observation deck, ItWas and Kayla watched the slow spiral of the Andari Nebula beyond the transparent hull, its light painting the room in shades of violet and gold. The chaos of the past few hours felt distant, almost comedic, though the memory of his plan and her kiss remained vivid. ItWas reflected on the absurdity of it all. His foolish idea, the micro-robot swarm, the nanites, and the way Kayla had navigated it all with terrifying competence and unexpected humor. "I suppose I should apologize again," ItWas said, his voice tentative. "For everything. The pretending, the near-death scenario, the chaos. I may have also invented some new human idiocy protocols for the station's records." Kayla laughed softly, a sound that carried across the observation deck like a ripple through zero gravity. "You're ridiculous," she said again, though this time it was affectionate, "and reckless, and infuriating. but also, I suppose, in some small, inconveniently charming way, heroic. Her ears twitched toward him as if emphasizing the last point. ItWas felt a warmth he hadn't expected and in a rare, impulsive move reached out to brush her hand lightly. She didn't pull away. "You've grown," she said quietly. "From chaotic to slightly less catastrophic, which is a compliment, believe it or not. And I suppose I may have underestimated humans." "Underestimating humans seems to be a recurring theme," ItWas admitted, grinning. "Especially me." Kayla shook her head, though the smile on her lips was undeniable. "You've learned that actions have consequences," she said, eyes softening. "Even reckless, absurd, misguided ones." ItWas nodded. "And that sometimes the chaos is worth it." They stayed there for a long while, floating in the quiet hum of the station, watching the distant lights of the nebula twist and shimmer. ItWas realized that his journey, his foolish, reckless, entirely ridiculous journey, had taught him more than he expected. About courage, about love, about patience, and about the strange, beautiful balance between risk and reward. Kayla tilted her head, ears brushing lightly against his shoulder, a gesture so subtle yet so intimate that it made his chest tighten with something close to awe. "Perhaps next time," she said with a teasing glint in her eyes, "you might try asking for a kiss without orchestrating your own near-death scenario." But then again, her lips curved into a mischievous smile. Where would the fun be in that? ItWas laughed, genuinely, the sound echoing against the observation deck panels. He had survived, he had learned, and he had, against all odds, won the attention, and something far more valuable, of the alien woman who had bewitched him from the moment he first saw her. The chaos of the station, the micro-robots, the nanites, the ridiculous drama, all of it, had led to this moment. Kayla leaned closer, brushing her lips gently against his cheek, her ears quivering in the faintest expression of delight. "Next time," she whispered, "try to keep the near-death theatrics to a minimum." ItWas smiled, feeling the absurd, chaotic, beautiful truth of the universe settle around them. "No promises," he said, and in the quiet glow of the nebula, with the station humming softly around them, he realized that sometimes love and life was exactly as unpredictable, infuriating, and magnificent as a human pretending to be dead for a kiss. And for the first time, he didn't mind the chaos at all.